beautiful sunshiny day in Darwin. I hope it's a great day wherever you are as well. So without further ado, let's get underway and learn more about how you can take those things you love, turn them into something that reflects your expertise, and then turns it into something which, you might have free workshops or webinars or even paid workshops or webinars. It depends on what your flavor is. Let's share that screen and get underway. I'd like to start off with a quote from Hilary Swank. Yes, the actress Hilary Swank. She's also an incredible businesswoman. And she says, you only have one life. And if you're not doing what you love, what's the point? And that's a bit of a theme today, is the ability to take what you love and turn it into something that you can share with other people as a business, as a hobby even, whatever you want to do, you can turn it into something that actually helps other people and positions yourself as an expert. What we're going to look at today is how to identify, confirm, and I guess enhance your expertise in what it is. And that's actually a very hard part to do, is to take something you think, oh, am I actually an expert in this? And then we look at turning it into something that you can put online or even in the real world, turning into a class or a course. We look at how you host workshops and webinars and where to start creating things like online courses. And we've also got a bit about the tools and the services that are going to bring all of that to life. But before I get underway, this is brought to you by Business Station and the Australian Small Business Advisory Services Digital Solutions Program. It's an initiative of the Australian government delivered in WA by Business Station, in Queensland by Regional Development Australia Brisbane, and Treaty Business Consulting in the Northern Territory. Now, if you're watching this live on Zoom today, I have got the chat channel open. I've got the Q&A open. So please feel free to ask a question at any point you like, and I'll answer those live. If you're watching this on YouTube, though, you're watching it after the fact. So if you've got a question, just pop them down in the comments below. And while you're there on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button so you can see more of these things coming through from myself and from Business Station as well. And what I'd like to say is that, I can be considered a bit of an expert in what I do as well. So I've done universities through the University of New South Wales in Sydney, through their business school, through the Chartered Institute of Marketing. You got these endless diplomas and things that they put out through those. They took a few years to get underway, and also doing a lot of things, up to 2 different TAFE courses a year, just to keep my skills sharp and knowing that I've got the right information from the right sources. That's led me to working with Facebook as one of their lead trainers, a digital marketing associate and media planning professional. Also with Google's Digital Springboard project that I'm still part of, and 3 government programs, the Be Connected program, connecting more senior Australians with online tools, and the Australian Small Business Advisory Services Digital Solutions Program across our great 3 states and territories, the Queensland, Western Australia, and the Northern Territory. And in the Northern Territory, I happen to be a business mentor for new businesses under the NICE program. If you don't know what that is, just Google that. You can find out how you can even take part in that as well. So a little bit about webinars that you need to know. They rose by 441% last year. Now, it was a bit of an unusual year, I guess, that we sort of transferred all our in-person classes to webinars. So there, of course, was going to be a very big increase in offline or online delivery of classes rather than in-person delivery. But 441% is the biggest rise we've ever seen in history. That said, 42% of people who went across to webinars and online delivery say they won't go back to in-person. And I've certainly seen that reflected in a lot of the in-person things I try to do in different markets, like in Townsville, Cairns, Mackay, Bundaberg, Darwin, Katherine, Alice Springs, Broome, Port Hedland. A lot of those areas that I go to, I've found that those people actually would prefer that I just did it online from wherever I was, because they can do it at their leisure when they want. They can do it wherever they want as well. They don't have to be in a formalized environment. So that's no surprise that not quite half, but not far under it, just wouldn't go back to being in person. And we've learned from a lot of our experience and from a lot of data coming out of Zoom that Tuesdays are the best day for be attending. Now, this was also the case before the pandemic, but before the pandemic, we also found that, Wednesdays and Thursdays are also good. But during this pandemic, we've actually found that the difference between the best day, which is Tuesday, and the worst day, which is Friday, is not that great. It's only about 10% of a difference. So people are attending on Fridays. I find I get really good turnouts to webinars on Fridays as well. So if that's something that is important to you, to get on a day that actually gets the best crowd, you may find that Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, middle of the week, seems to be the best. Oh, grab that coffee. It's getting a little bit cold, actually. And if you try to do Mondays and Fridays, don't worry too much because you still get good turnouts of those days too. When it comes to in-person workshops, they went down by 92% last year. Wow. But in 2021, we've found that even the return to that, and this is just Australian figures, it's still around half the level it was in 2019. So the workshop thing is still just gradually keeping back. And we noticed that also with things like conferences. Even in 2021, we just don't have the certainty with conferences. We don't know when borders will be closed down again. We don't know when there's going to be hotspots declared. So we don't know whether an in-person workshop that involves people coming from interstate is actually going to work for us. And we find that in workshops that after hours, funnily enough, is the best time to attend. And I think, well, kind of course, because when you think about it, your people are working during the day. So if they're doing a side hustle, they usually do their work on that after hours because they're working a full-time job. So if they're doing a full-time job, then well, then you've got to consider that they probably don't have the ability to be able to go to a workshop during the day. But if even if they've got a business, they're usually working on a business during the day. So they don't really have time until after. And even then, with family commitments and whatnot, it can be a little bit hard. This is where webinars tend to do very well because you can have your webinar running whilst you're still cooking, whilst you're still getting kids off to bed. Even after you get the kids to bed, you can put in your headphones and listen to it. It's not as intrusive on your life as an in-person workshop tends to be. So why would you even want to do any of this? No, you do what you do. You make candles. You are a consultant. You are a personal trainer. You're all these things. Do you really have to be a social media and webinar and workshop superstar on top of all that? Well, kind of these days, that's the way you stand out from the crowd. What happens with workshops and webinars is that they do develop a level of authority and trust and credibility because you're bringing across your knowledge of your industry. You're bringing across a specific expertise that you have in that particular market or that particular industry. You are providing a real face to your business and a real face to your industry. One of the things I love doing so much is going and talking at schools about getting particularly more women into tech jobs because it just provides a better balance of content for tech companies. At the moment, they're very, very skewed in favor of heterosexual male content. And so the world is viewed, and these particular platforms we work on are very much viewed from a heterosexual male perspective because that's who's largely building these platforms. So to get some diversity in there is great. So I like to start at schools. I speak to a lot of schools in the Northern Territory and Queensland about how to develop a career or develop the skills that are required when it comes to going to a tech job after you finish school, or what kind of qualifications and study do you need to do. By doing that, I'm providing a face of the tech industry and the marketing industry that says, here you go, here's a career path for you that may not involve you even having to leave the particular market you're living in right now, if that's important to you to stay around home, which is certainly opening up a lot of opportunities for remote communities, especially remote Indigenous communities where family and country is so strongly baked into who you are. So providing that real face to an industry or to a business or to a market helps develop a level of rapport and trust. And of course, when you have something that people have to register for and they know who you are and they get that you're an authority and they get that you have credibility and you have some degree of expertise in what you're doing, then the attendees tend to be quite motivated because they think that they're going to learn something from what you're doing, that they're going to pick up a skill, they're going to pick up a tip or a trick, or even there's that one thing. Honestly, I've gone to a $1,500 conference once, it's probably about 2 years ago, and I walked away with one tip, just one tip. But that tip was so powerful that it made the whole $1,500 actually about $2,500 in total with travel and accommodation and all that. But it was worth it because I was able to apply this one thing to most of my clients that allowed me to make a lot more money in return from it. So that kind of stuff that's what we're looking for as attendees of webinars and of workshops. We're looking for that tip, that one piece of magic that we haven't come across before, although we haven't managed to Google our way towards, or some way of that person communicating what that particular magic or what that particular expertise happens to be. Another way that that workshops and webinars help you is that they help you and your business to develop relationships and further brand awareness. During a workshop or a webinar, like we've got a fairly small amount of us in the room today, so there's under 50 people, but at the same time, we know that there's time for us to build a connection. So there's time for us to ask questions. There's time for us to open the chat and connect with each other even, or we'll find that there's time in a workshop where there may only be 10 to 12 of you in a room where you're part of a very small class. So you can actually ask very specific questions and get answers that are within the context of your particular business or the problem you're trying to solve. They definitely build those relationships, especially when you've got high quality content, because that high quality content, when you're delivering it, comes across as very credible. It looks like you care, but it also means that you're promoting yourself when you're in a workshop or a webinar. There's a promotion of yourself. Like every time I have to switch on this camera, I've learned that I've got to wear nice shirts. And the reason I need to wear nice shirts is it makes me look more professional, and it makes me look like I care a little bit more about my presentation when it comes to the people who I'm presenting to. This is not just my daily webinar where I can just whack on a singlet and put on some thongs. I dress properly and appropriately. I put on a pair of pants, which is you would think I would put on at least a pair of pants. I put on nice pants. I even put my shoes on so that I'm actually in that frame of mind where I'm feeling professional. I'm feeling like I've got expertise and I've got something of value that I'm going to deliver people. It also means I care about the lighting. I care about the quality of sound. So therefore, that higher quality of delivery means that I'm promoting myself as a professional who cares, but also as a professional who actually takes his time to ensure he's got the right lighting, the right ring light, the right presentation tools, and the right microphone to be able to deliver a professional delivery. Then you've also got their email address for your expertise. So it's a bit of an exchange. They give you their email address so you can then contact them later on. They want access to your expertise. The price of entry is at least their email address. And that's a powerful thing to get because it allows you to touch base later and follow up with people. Now, with the ASBAS program, it's a little bit different. I don't follow up with you because that's the job of the program to do that. But I can actually follow up with you. There's completely appropriate for me to reach out afterwards and say, hey, is there anything I can help you with? But at the same time, I provide access to myself at the end of each webinar to give you access to be able to get hold of me through a one-to-one appointment, or at least just to drop me an email. So that sort of thing, that exchange of expertise for contact details is a really big business relationship builder. It allows you to go on afterwards and build that relationship. And it's really, really good for building a pathway after your event. So for instance, if you've done your webinar or you've done your workshop, at the end of it, you can actually point to what's next. So usually what I do is ask you to go and watch it again on YouTube if you missed anything, or if you'd like a one-to-one with the ASBAS Digital Solutions Program, you can get that through the Business Station website to go and book a one-to-one with myself or any one of the other experts on our particular panel of advisors. So there's always a path forward, which is excellent brand awareness for you because it means that they realize that there's a second touch point there. And by having that second touch point, you're moving someone down what is called the sales funnel. Have a bit more of that to come. But it's also about having a better relationship, a deeper relationship with someone. If you've got them in a room, you can develop that individual personal rapport. If they're on a webinar, I just see a list of names. They're not even connected through to email addresses, but I can go back into Eventbrite and find out what those are, or into the Atom system and find out what they are, reach out to you. But what it does allow me to at least to do that. So I can then reach out afterwards if that's appropriate for this particular webinar, and we can follow up with more stuff. So there's always a pathway you can add, or an upsell, if you like, to another different version of you. So that going from the free webinar base to the paid workshop base, or the paid workshop base into the paid one-to-one consultation base. Having workshops and webinars absolutely kills it at understanding your target audience. You get to know what the questions are that potential clients have. So everybody who I deliver one of these to is a potential client. There's someone who I could potentially take on in a one-to-one capacity to to serve in some way. I could manage their social media for them, help them create better social media, help them to build a website, host a website, migrate a website, choose a customer relationship management or even a payment system or a point of sale system that helps them to better run their business. Now, all those are fantastic things I can do, but I wouldn't know that that's what people need until I get them in a room or get them in a webinar and they actually ask questions. And I go, well, this might be what I thought people would ask, but there could be a very big difference in what people actually truly really need. So if you really want to know what people want, it's like the Spice Girls songs. Tell me what I want, what I really, really want. Yeah, tell me what you want, what you really, really want. That's how we do it through Q&As, chats, and just general chit chat in an in-person workshop basis as well. You also understand the very unique needs and challenges of your markets, particularly in a live workshop where you're in person. That allows you to, for instance, connect with the people who are there that you're serving in the workshop and learn what's very important to that particular market. So let's just say I'm running the workshop in Townsville. So in Townsville, I might have a group of 15 people in the room, and I'm actually learning as I'm going what the unique trials and tribulations that people in Townsville who are owning businesses need to go through. So I've got that piece of information now that's in my head and written down my notes that I know that when I come back to Townsville the next time, I'm able to deliver something which bears that in mind. And that takes us back to the building better connections, because I know a little bit more about the market and I can speak to the market. Then I'm able to connect even better the second time around. That's why I don't go to a market just once. I go 2 or 3 times in, say, a year or 18 months, because I want to be able to capitalize on what I've learned from the last visit and better be able to find solutions for the people coming along. So you get the best of me after the second or third workshops when I'm coming to your town. You also get to road test new ideas. That way you're going, well, I'm going to try, sharing my mobile screen on the display. And if you found a way to do that, you can do it through your Mac, you can do it through PCs, through Chromecasts, through all sorts of different gadgets. Then you're able to try out a different way of presenting to people. And like I tried that out in a place called Broome and it worked really, really well. It was awesome. It sort of brought the idea of what to do on a mobile phone with Instagram completely to life. But before that, I hadn't done that. So now what I do whenever I do workshops in other states, I take what I need along with me to be able to share my mobile screen on the big screen so people can see me actually using the tools rather than just talking about using the tools. You also use the experience to tailor your services and your products better. If you get into a workshop and it's all about, let's just say, for instance, essential oils, and you have this particular thing where you say, I only use Australian bush organics for that, then you get into your workshops and you're talking about making essential oils and you're helping other people to make them. And then you realize that, well, no one really has the money to be spending more on Australian bush botanicals. They just want to be able to work with what they grow in their gardens. So you've learned that you go, okay, what I'm going to do next time, I'm not going to talk about my particular kind of essences that I produce. I'm going to talk about the stuff that you can produce in the average suburban garden in the particular market you're talking to. Makes a big difference because it allows you to speak the language that the attendees are speaking. And it actually tells you that if you want to sell kits for starting up how to do your own essential oils or your own, soy wax melts or whatever the fragrance and aromatherapy thing is, then you've got to know that you're doing it in a way that's going to appeal to the audience you're trying to sell to. You're not trying to sell people something that they don't actually want. And that's something that's really, really powerful about this kind of thing, because I guess over the last 3 years of doing ASBAS Digital Solutions workshops and webinars, I've learned very, very much that people don't always need what you think they need. You've got to listen, learn from previous webinars and workshops, and then you go back and go, okay, I'm going to do this workshop again, but I'm going to take on board the feedback or the ideas I got from the last one and tweak it up slightly so it can better serve people. And usually by the time you get to the third or fourth iteration of a webinar or a workshop by any of our presenters, it's actually so finely tuned down to a fine art to what people are actually looking for. And then they're also pretty simple and affordable to host. You can pretty much do a webinar for free. You don't really need to pay for Zoom to have a half hour, 40 minutes webinar. Of course, after that, it cuts off, but so it has to be pretty short. But you can use some tools for free. Microsoft Teams you can use. You can use Facebook Live or Instagram Live or YouTube Live to run any of those. They can be a free version of a webinar. Workshops can be free, or they can be cheap to host as well. So you don't necessarily always have to pay for a space to put it in or pay for extra equipment. You can be really basic to start with. My first workshops that I ran, now this would be about 2016, I reckon. I started running my first workshops that are like this. I ran them out of McDonald's meeting rooms. So remember, McDonald's have their party rooms, so you can have parties in there. More recently, they've called them community rooms or meeting rooms, and you can book those out to have people teaching how to do stuff. So you can have lessons in there, you can have community meetings, all that sort of stuff, and it's free. All that you like to do is make sure you buy something at Macca's. I usually buy a coffee or something like that, or a milkshake, just to show that I'm supporting the guys who are supporting the community. So you can start off like that. I started out Macca's. In fact, I even started out with Macca's that didn't even have meeting rooms, or forgot to put in my meeting room and gave it to someone else. And I just started meeting in the outdoor seating at Macca's. And then I started moving into other places where I could get some meeting room space. I'm joining community meeting hubs like the Gold Coast Tech Space, or shared workspaces and that. So some of those are cheap, some of them are free, some of them are membership based, and they give you access to be able to get into places. So you don't have to start out big and bad. You don't have to go into a 60-person conference room at the Hilton Hotel. You can just start off at Macca's, or start off at a cafe, or start off in a park somewhere. You don't have to start off with the big bold statement. You can just start off with really, really basic. I might be doing these in hotel conference rooms now, but I didn't start there. I started in much more humble circumstances. Now, your webinars can also be repurposed and reused. What I do, I repurpose these webinars and turn them into content on YouTube and Facebook. And also these days, I'm putting it onto Instagram's IGTV. So I'm going to different places. I'm just about to set up Twitch as well, which is another video streaming platform. So I'm going to be putting my stuff into Twitch as well. The more places, the better chance I have of catching people into what I am actually building around my own sales funnel or expertise funnel to fulfill what my particular aims and goals are of what I'm doing with webinars and workshops. And then you can also take your webinars and anything that's recorded and chop them up into pieces. So I can take a little piece of this and contain it into one minute spiel about why I do webinars. So I can take this particular screen that I'm showing right now, I can turn off my screen sharing so that I can read it, and hey, then you see me, and then I can just read straight off the screen and say a webinar can be free to host, workshops can be free or cheap to host, and then I'm just presenting something where I'm talking to screen, and that's really easy to share as content for other stuff. I'll just bring that back up for you. So you don't always have to have a slide showing on smaller pieces that you want to put on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or wherever. You can just talk to screen, hide what's on the screen, or bring it back and in and out if you want to. You can use anything from Zoom to their screen recording software that will do that as well. Camtasia Studio is one of them that does it, but these days I can actually do it based on the Chrome browser has a free plugin that allows me to record what's on screen, record from the camera, and record from audio, and I can turn and switch between them all as well. It's a really good piece of technology, and it's a free plugin that goes on the Chrome. I can't even remember what it's called. I use it only a few times here and there, but it's very good for creating little bits and pieces that I then chop up and change in iMovie or in InVideo, or Canva is actually really quite effective for doing that these days as a video creation tool too. And you don't have to use simple, like really, really super expensive webinar equipment. You can use, a $50 microphone. You can use a $500 laptop computer. You can get my ring light that's ahead of me. You can just see it reflected in my glasses. It's just slightly above me. My ring light cost me $35 and a great big 2 meter high stand for $35 at Kmart. So you can get things that aren't stupid expensive. You don't even need to get a ring light. You can just get desk lamps and just focus them in from different angles so they're not right in your face. If you've got glasses like me, sometimes those things do reflect, so it's a bit distracting, but you learn the right positions. Mine is that the ring light at the bottom of it is about the level with my forehead. So it actually takes me until I look up before that will actually reflect in my glasses. So you learn the different techniques around how to do these things without having, reflections in glasses, glossiness on your face, the right level of touch up in zoom to make you not look like a porcelain doll, but to still look a lot more presentable. And learning, how backgrounds work, and knowing that having a bit of greenery in the background is actually very good for lightening and softening up. Having something interesting for people to look in the background gives them something to, I guess, focus on other than you, if they're someone who's easily distracted. And also, by not sitting deadly still and just presenting like a robot, you're actually creating a point of focus for people to come. So I'm a bit gesticulative with my hands. It's a big word, isn't gesticulative. I like to gesture a lot with my hands. I like to move a lot. I tend to turn around and all that. And that's all very good for online video, particularly for webinars, because it makes it a little bit more engaging than someone just sitting there just reading things off a screen just with a very monotone voice. And you would probably turn this off after about 5 minutes because it would really do your head in. So it doesn't have to be expensive to do these things. Webinars are also awesome lead generation. So if you're aware of what the sales funnel is, it's like an awareness, consideration, conversion before you make the money. So registration is at what we call the top of the sales funnel, in what we call the awareness stage, where people don't necessarily know who you are, but they're going, you know what, I'm going to register for this. At that point, they move into the consideration. So the registration is showing an interest in what you do, and the attendance is showing in the middle of the funnel that they are considering you as an expert, or considering you as someone that they want to work with. Now, that could be very powerful for you, because you could find that people don't, if you're the only person in your area and in your level of expertise and in your industry who actually does a workshop or a webinar, that whole room of people that you're speaking to, or that virtual room of people you're speaking to on Zoom or Teams or whatever the tool is you're using, they could be your clients that are testing you out. So this is your chance to kind of like do a bit of a job interview for them to get across that initial line. So they go, yep, I want to go to that next level, that conversion level, where I'll be able to sell my products and services to those people. So the sales funnel is very much alive and well when it comes to the whole world of webinars and workshops. Now, this one, do bear with me. This is how to identify your professional expertise and specialty. And I will sort of run through this rather quick. But first of all, you need to find out what your professional expertise is, because you might be going, I do want to do these, but I'm not kind of sure what I'm an expert in. Most people sit in this whole area. They go, well, I'm just a mug punter. I don't know anything. I've just been doing this job for 25 years. Maybe you're an expert. So this is identifying a professional expertise, is understanding what you're qualified in. So I've got examples on the next screen. What you've done for a long time, a specialty in your particular field that you are known for, or those things you are known to be an expert in amongst your peers. So people recognize you as an expert. Those things could be, now this is my example. I won't use my examples much in this. They're mostly just generic ones, but my professional expertise examples would be that I have a master's in business information systems and marketing from University of New South Wales. I've been in marketing related work since 1999. I'm particularly known for my knowledge of social media marketing, and my peers recognize me as an expert in Facebook ads planning and buying. So that's saying that, yes, I have qualifications, I have experience, I have a particular niche that I'm known for, and then my peers, those who are other experts, recognize me as being particularly skilled in this one at the bottom. Then you identify your particular industry expertise or your speciality. So that's when you're looking at what it is within your industry that you're an expert as. So for instance, you will ask yourself, what industry have you mostly been known to work in or serve? Is there a particular niche of your industry that you're very well known in? People know you in that industry. Or is there just this one thing, this one industry that you worked within all your career? You don't necessarily work in it. You might have even worked for that industry. Is your business part of that industry? For instance, are you a hospitality business, or are you someone who serves the hospitality businesses of the area? So examples could be that you might be a certified practicing accountant with 25 years serving specifically tourism businesses. I work with an accountant who actually is a CPA who specializes in tourism businesses. You may be a digital marketer who works mostly with tradies. I'm actually mentoring a young guy who's actually creating a digital marketing agency based around working with tradies. And it's a really lucrative area, but he's also learning it's hard to get money out of tradies because they're very bad at paying their bills sometimes. You also could be a financial advisor who works with young people specifically, or you're a fragrance maker who works with organic and vegan ingredients. These are starting to really niche down on what your particular expertise is. Now, if you're going to particularly big markets like national markets like Australia or even international, you can afford to niche down. If you're only doing workshops in your local area, getting super niche could be a bit of a danger. You might have trouble filling up a room with something super, like very specific and niche. Also identify where you're serving people. So the geographic market is all about asking yourself, are you limited to expertise in your town or in your state or your country? Does your expertise easily transfer across state lines, international borders from one town to the next? Or does your expertise tend to be just really about your particular town? Do you speak a language other than English? Because your expertise can be very much in need if you speak Spanish, for instance. There's a large proportion of Spanish speakers in Australia, Chinese speakers, Vietnamese speakers. If you're able to deliver the expertise you are known for in another language other than English, that can be really powerful. That can mean the difference between you being up against 500 other people who's in your niche and doing workshops. You might be the only person delivering that in Korean or in Bahasa, Indonesia, for instance. Do you have a natural connection with another state or a country? I have a natural connection with New South Wales because I grew up there, a natural connection with Queensland because I spent a lot of my career in there, and a very natural connection with the Northern Territory where I live and have lived on and off since 2003. But I can also say I've also got a connection with particular towns. I know someone who works in the council in Bundaberg, so therefore I'm able to get someone in with events there and get myself plugged into events. I've made myself network in places like Broome in Western Australia, so I know that I can fill a room over there because I know people in that particular town. So you might say your qualifications are recognized internationally, so that transfers well. You maybe once lived in or have worked in a particular town and city, so you have a natural connection. You speak Korean, so you can deliver workshops in Korean, or your particular art technique that you're using or your energy healing technique or modality is not limited to a specific country. You may be able to deliver that to anywhere in the world, and you don't even have to be there in person. You can also then ask, what's your experiential expertise? And experiential expertise is just a fancy way of saying, did you get this from experience or from study, or maybe both? Because we do know that there's plenty of cases where study is not required to end up being rich. Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, and many other people are college dropouts, and they just went on to become incredibly rich and incredibly powerful without ever having finished a university degree. So it's not always a study thing. Sometimes it's just experience. They have a knack for solving a problem. And you look at, what do you have experience with that isn't related to your job or business? Now, this is really interesting. Now, hang with me for the example I'm going to give in just a sec with that, because this you would think is like, well, maybe aren't I supposed to be doing things that are related to my business or to my way of the way I work? Not always. Then you can ask yourself, what is something that is closely related to your business that you are an expert in? So what isn't related and what maybe is closely related? And then ask yourself, are you known but not known for a particular expertise? So are you known, so people know who you are and you're very well known in town, but you're not known for any particular expertise that you want to deliver on? That could be a really interesting place to start delivering. So the examples would be, you may never have studied marketing, but you've worked in it for 12 years. You may be a plumber, but you also happen to be a cinematic drone pilot. Awesome, hey? You're a bookkeeper, but you're also an expert in teaching people how to use MyOb. You may be known as a business owner, but people didn't realize you're also a very successful charity fundraiser. So these are all things that you can deliver workshops and webinars on. Identifying your expertise is highly important, because it allows you to then claim an area that maybe nobody else is claiming. So when it comes to claiming your expertise, Ask yourself, how long have you done it for? How successful have you been? How many have you tried many ways of getting to where you are now? And have you failed along the way to the success? Because all these questions are the questions that people want to answer themselves. They want to go, well, before I ask this person for advice, I want to know that they've done it for a while, or they've been successful, or they've tried a few ways of doing this before they landed on this particular way, or they've failed a couple of times and then they learn from that. So I can learn from their mistakes and not fail as well. So examples would be, you may have been baking wedding cakes for 27 years, or you might have been a coach for 2 years, which is a lot less time, but you already have 82 clients. So you've been very successful in it. You may have tried 3 different types of training before you found this particular method you're training people in now. Doesn't mean the others were rubbish. It just means that this one is the one you landed on because it was so much better than the other two. Or you may have, like me, failed at business in the past, learn that lesson, and then use that lesson to succeed in business now or previously. You might have had, lots of crashes before you had a success. Donald Trump has been bankrupt 3 times, and then he got to be the president of the United States. Now, I don't like the guy, but I do at least have to respect the journey. That is incredible. Like, to fail in business so epically to billions of dollars, to the tune of billions, like, we're not talking millions, we're talking billions, and still come out the other side and be a president. That's crazy stuff. It just goes that the story of failure and getting up from failure is a very powerful one. Now, what you need to do is establish your expertise, and you do that by, sharing who you've worked with, sharing what your degrees or your qualifications, diplomas you've got. If you've been seen on TV, heard on local radio, interviewed in magazine and newspapers, or if you've got some credibility and some experience that's actually easily associated with to find online. So those examples could be that you worked with 3 government programs and 5 national brands. So you go, okay, that's my credibility. Or you might say, I have a diploma or a degree or a master's or a bachelor's in this particular area that I'm going to talk on. That gives you credibility. You might get a regular guest interview spot on radio. I do that every Tuesday on one of the local radio stations in my market. And that's helped me to establish some credibility. So I can say, as heard on Territory FM, as heard on Mix 1049. And do you have videos or blogs or podcasts that are available online? I've been working my butt off to build a podcast in this last 6 months, and it's doing remarkably well. I've also been working my butt off to make these into a YouTube catalog too, so that my expertise can be shared on YouTube. If anyone wants to know who I am and what I do, they can just Google my name, and I'm all over the internet. Like, there's so much of me all over the internet. So that establishes that I'm known, I'm a known factor, I have credibility, and I've got stuff online that's easy to find and easy to watch and easy to interpret as me being an expert. And then finally, you're going to confirm your expertise. This is before we even get started on building these courses and building these webinars. You confirm your expertise by identifying and connecting with other experts in your field. This is so important because you want to be able to get those recommendations, reviews. You want to be able to be seen beside other people who are considered experts in your market or experts in your industry. If you just sit out on your own, it can be really, really difficult for people to trust you because you become that lone wolf. We know that lone wolves, because they're not sort of tempered by other people, and they're not kind of, being tested by others and not being sharpened by others, they tend to be a little lazy and maybe a little bit old in their thinking. Also have an understand or have an opinion about what the future of your industry will look like, or the future of your job, or future of your business type will have. I've got very strong opinions about the role of social media in the future, and very strong opinions about SEO, search engine optimization, in the future as well. And I share that in a lot of the things I do. And eventually I'll start doing, a bunch of expert talks, not just how-tos like these webinars, but expert talks on, based upon my experience, based upon where I think things are going, this is what I think you can prepare for in the future. You can also take a certain standpoint or a certain platform to base your name on. You may come across as the conservative marketer, the progressive marketer. You could be the vegan of your industry. You could be the plant-based person of your particular industry. You could be the potty mouth swearing person like Gary Vaynerchuk, or you could be like Murray Smith, who would never let a word starting with SHIT come out of her mouth because she's just very, very prim and proper and presents everything perfectly professionally. So you could take a particular type of personality in there. Also, take on leadership roles in your market too. That gives you extra credibility and confirms that you're not just an expert, but others see you as an expert on committees, boards, things like that, where people will invite you to be on panels and to give recommendations to members of certain industry groups. So now we're going to turn all this into a class. So we can do that in in-person workshops. You can do that through live webinars or live video on things like Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn in some cases, or you can create an online course. I'm going to start with the in-person workshops. The advantages of these are they're very personal, very intimate. You have better access to the expert in the room. So people tend to like these because they feel like they can ask anything and the person's already there and they can talk to them afterwards. It's very, very personal. You can also have a very high rate of conversion. You find that in-person workshops convert better as a percentage to turning those attendees into clients down the track. But there is a risk of no-show, and it's around about a third of people who book those particular workshops won't turn up. Then you've got live video and live webinars. So more people can attend these. You can automate some of these things as well. You can be done on social media. We can do it on tools like Zoom, like we're doing today. The problem is, though, that these do have a lower conversion rate. So you tend to find that less people are attending because of the anonymity of it all, will tend to not necessarily convert as easily into clients. But there's also a lower turnout rate. I can tell you now that I would have probably 100 people register a webinar, but less than 30 would normally turn up. That's a massive drop off, 66% or more drop off on people who say they're going to come but don't actually turn up. So be ready for that. Just understand that chances are that around 50% will drop off, and sometimes that can be much, much more if it's a free thing. Online courses can be automated. They're pretty much always automated. They have a low rate of completion. A lot of people start courses but never finish them. There's this idea, oh yeah, another course, yeah, right. And another expert give you another course trying to make residual income out of me. There's so many of them out there now. It's kind of being commoditized to a point where the courses aren't being trusted as much as they used to. You can charge for courses though. There can be a revenue stream for you, and they tend to have quite a high conversion rate for those who complete it to go on and maybe get you to do some paid work with them as well. So how do you go and create all these things? This is the big question. In-person workshops can be used by booking meeting rooms. So that's the first thing you need to do, is have access to a space. Now, you don't have to use expensive conference centers and meeting rooms in hotels. You can just use churches, who often will book things out for a very nominal cost. Local member of parliament, their offices are often used for free by local businesses and community groups. Shared office spaces, you can use McDonald's meeting rooms. I don't think Hungry Jack's has that kind of thing, but you kind of a lot of a very community-minded organizations often have meeting rooms that they'll let you use for these kinds of things. You can set up then your ticketing on things like Eventbrite or Humanitix, which is my favorite one, because it gives all the booking fees to particular charities. So you can set up that so people can book. So you've got control of knowing how many people are coming and RSVPing. Then you can advertise your stuff on Facebook and LinkedIn so that you're not in a position where you need to worry about paying television and radio ad campaigns, that sort of thing. Live webinar and video, likewise, can be used to be advertised on Facebook and LinkedIn. Your ticketing still on things like Eventbrite, Humanitix, sticky tickets, local tickets, whatever the ticket things are you want to, or even just, by putting it on Facebook and having people RSVP there. LinkedIn's got an excellent little event platform as well, where people can RSVP on there. But you can do these then on live platforms like Facebook Live, YouTube Live, Instagram Live, Zoom, Teams. You can use StreamYard, which plugs into multiple different channels at once. So you can go into StreamYard and then have it go out to Facebook and YouTube and Instagram all at the same time. It's great. Really, really good connections. Zoom and Teams, though, are made for this kind of thing, which is why we use Zoom. It's got lots of tools that I can work with, so I know where I'm going. I can see one thing up here, another thing up there, see the chat windows there, answer questions along the way over there, and refer to people by name by a little window over there. So it's got the tools that make it a lot easier for you to do that kind of thing. Your online courses tend to be hosted either on your website or through things like Teachable, Udemy, GuruCan is the one I'm starting to build a course in. Kajabi, Thinkific, Udemy, Podia is another one. There's lots and lots and dozens of platforms that let you do this. Now, they're not really free. Like, you're gonna have to pay for these things because you're obviously looking to make money. But there are some like SharePoint, not SharePoint, SlideShare, sorry, SlideShare, which is a really good one that's owned by LinkedIn, which is free. So you can use SlideShare to host things like that, but you can't then charge for those things. They're just out there for free. And then, of course, promote everything on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram, all the normal places that you would normally go and, you know, promote your programs and promote your courses. Now, the essential tools you're going to need when you do these things for your in-person workshops, I would say you definitely need something like a whiteboard where you can take people's questions along the way, because sometimes questions can derail a presentation. So you've got a certain cadence you're working on, a certain momentum you've got, and then someone just like hits you with a question that's totally unrelated to anything you're talking about and say, I'm just going to put that on the whiteboard for later and we'll answer that at the end. That's what they use whiteboards for. Display screens and projectors make it easier for people to see what you're talking about and for you to show live examples online. For instance, if you're training someone how to use Microsoft Excel, it makes sense to have Excel up on the screen so people can see what you're actually doing. Having access to power for people to plug in their devices, access to toilets, obviously, because we are biological beings. Tea, coffee, water are basics, but you might want to put some bickies in there just to give someone an idea so their blood sugar doesn't get too low. Things like accessibility, understanding that's not always easy for people who are mobility impaired to get into some places. And things like notes and note paper and pens, whilst you don't necessarily need to provide them, having them there can be a bit of a it gives people something to do. Some people are very kinesthetic learners. They need to do something to get that thing coming in. So they might not learn by just listening. They need to learn by listening and writing, which is why a lot of people write copious notes when they go to workshops and conferences, because they are kinesthetic learners. They learn from doing, and it helps them to write things down and to draw. I draw diagrams. I draw a lot of flowcharts and diagrams and cartoons and things. And so I can put it into a much more a way that I can learn more. And I've actually had people ask me if they can take a photo of my notes, because my notes seem to make more sense to them because I don't write them, I draw them. So those sort of things are important in an in-person workshop. Then we look at what's important for live video or webinars. And that's really simple. Good internet. It makes a difference. I upgraded my internet here and it is fantastic. Never have an issue with it. You might also want to back up internet on phone. I've got my phone here ready to go and ready to, to be able to do the kind of stuff I need to do to be a professional host of webinars and that sort of thing. So I just had my torch turn on my phone because I pressed the wrong button. There we go. It's off now. Having a bright and cheerful background or location. I'll just quickly unshare my screen so you can see it's bright in here. I've got some stuff that sort of softens it from being a very, very harsh background. So I've got my lucky bamboo. I've got my couple of little potted plants. I've got stuff that's going to soften the background a little bit to make it so it's not quite so boring as just a plain white background. I might get rid of the flag though. The flag doesn't really say much for me. My head's usually in the way because I've got a big head anyway. But that sort of thing of creating a bit of a background will help you to create a much nicer, softer, gentler, and more accessible kind of experience for people as well. Having a good microphone. I tell you now, people will forgive poor visuals. They'll forgive bad slides. They'll forgive a camera that doesn't quite do the job, but they'll never forgive really poor audio, because that's the bit that people connect with. They don't connect with your face necessarily. They connect with your voice, your style of presenting. If someone's a motor mouth and they go, and you can't understand a word they're saying, they were less likely to forgive you than if, say, for instance, your slides had too many words on them. So to make sure that you speak clearly, but have a good microphone as well, because that will make a huge difference in the quality of your delivery. Just using your laptop's microphone isn't going to be that good. It's not going to be what you need to have. Now I've got other tools, like I've a plugin called Crisp, which removes all the background noise. You can't hear my noisy, my noisy computer and my noisy, because the fan is just going ballistic on this computer. You can't hear my noisy air conditioner. You can't hear the guys that are working on the roof. They're going bang, 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 because this thing filters all of that out. So those sort of things can be really helpful. A reliable, fast computer can also be helpful. having a computer that sort of seizes up all the time. You can have the best internet connection in the world, but if your graphics card on your computer is really, really bad, then the idea of translating this down the camera into something which can be transferred through the internet is not going to be great. And then also have some knowledge of your systems. So know the systems you're working with. If you're using Facebook Live, know how to use it in Creator Studio. That's where you go to learn all the ins and outs. Go to the Facebook's blueprint tools to understand how live video works on Instagram and Facebook. Understand how to use Zoom the best possible way so people understand it, and understand your tools as in knowing that when you're talking to people, talk to them in the camera. Don't be talking to them over here because you can see yourself and their pictures over there. That looks really disconnected. Come back here. This is my tiny little screen. They're my two big screens on either side. This tiny little screen is where I put my presentation because it keeps me focused on you. So it's something that builds a lot more clear rapport. So have knowledge of your systems, have knowledge of how people are working, and then understand how that all works. When it comes to recording an online course though, well, then a good microphone is paired up with a very good camera. Having a really bright environment that's a bit more, probably a bit more professional than my background for a course. I'd need to probably remove the flag, probably turn everything around to a blank wall, and then maybe project something on there through like a fake background or something like that. Rehearse. If you got like an online course, rehearse your lines first before you record them. Use your slides, use your notes, make them available. Make sure you've got things like questions and answers ready to go in that course. Frequently asked questions go a long way to making a course more consumable. Have your assessments ready, or how you're going to assess people, and have some kind of upsell at the end of it, because when people finish their course, they're going to be hungry for more. So make sure you've got something that's going to give them that little bit more. So just a recap before we go. First of all, when it comes to making these things, find your particular expertise. And I spent so much of this particular webinar on that because this is the most important thing. The tools, you'll learn all those. The presentation styles, you'll learn all that. The content, you already know that. But understanding what it is you're an expert in means you won't fail when you go out there. You won't be coming across as being something you're not, or an expert in something you don't do. So find what your expertise is, establish that expertise, and then confirm that expertise so that if anyone needs to look you up and say, are they an expert, and they can't find you online, I'll just assume that you're just another snake oil salesman and you're not really that much of an expert in anything. Find your platform, find your model. So are you going to do online? Are you going to do in person? Are you going to do courses? Find out which one you're going to do, and then find the platform that's going to support that, whether it's Udemy or Teachable or Podia or Kajabi, or whether it's going to be just simply Zoom, or maybe even just Facebook Live. And then have the right tools to support that. That's almost the last thing, because the tools and the systems are kind of like they're just a bit of execution at the end. You can start off small, start off bad. My first videos on YouTube were terrible. In one of them, I'm not even wearing a shirt and it looks terrible. So it's like, just don't bash yourself too hard for starting off bad and then getting better as time goes on. If you'd like to talk more about any of this, please do reach out through dante@treaty.com.au. You can follow me on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram, and this will be available on YouTube as well. And if you're on YouTube and watching this, please, I would love it if you could give me a subscribe on there, just so you can see more of this content coming through to your notifications. So thank you so much for joining me. I do hope you enjoy these. I've got another 4 webinars this week, so there's tons of stuff I have to do. In the meantime, though, thank you for taking time out of your business to work on your business.